Hello everybody. It is still Sunday, the 2nd of the 1st, and I was not going to make a second video today, but somehow I've been pushed into it again. So, right, because of comments I got about my use of Ephesians 6:12, and the comment that Paul was a liar, which he is, he's a false prophet, and we shouldn't look at it. You know, it is the worst that ever has happened to the church. Again, I would agree with that. But if you do not understand the workings of it, the workings of the serpent, because Paul is a serpent, you will not recognize it in other settings. It is like training your immune system. Yeah? If a half-truth, which is a virus, one strand of RNA comes into your body needs to recognize it. It needs to have knowledge of it in order to recognize it. Yeah, and running away from it and hiding from it will not teach your body, or in this case your mind, to recognize what is being worked on you. And that is how sheeple are being driven. Yeah? Oh, run away, burn the book. God forbid that you should learn something. God forbid that you should learn to discern. Now, the difference between Jesus and Paul is this, that Jesus brought you the knowledge of the two masters. He brought you the knowledge of what it is you're able to do, and two different ways to deal with the situation of the two masters. What, you know, a choice that you can make, and in that he set you free. Because it is purely by giving the choice and the knowledge how to work that choice that you are free. Because if you're under the impression that it is inevitable, that there is no choice, you are then a slave. So in that Jesus set you free. Paul is a deceiver that sets you on one way and saying this is the way, there is no other. And that, although the way that Jesus chose in the end for himself, that was his choice to go to the cross, is the choice of becoming a part of that kingdom by altering your humanity and making yourself into something that can serve that kingdom fully. Paul did not alter his humanity. He had absolutely no intention of going to the cross. But what he did was, so no self-sacrifice on the part of Paul, but trying to create slaves for that kingdom amongst the Gentiles, obviously, by again taking away the knowledge of the choice. And he's doing the way of the serpent. And the way of the serpent is a distortion of the truth, a slight alteration. The serpent is very subtle. Of the truth, slight alteration of the truth, so that you swallow falsehood together with the truth. So, and learning to recognize that, to train our mind to recognize that, we can see it in other places, and we can see the serpent coming when we understand its ways. What's happening here in Ephesians is actually, I believe, applied psychology these days. I don't think Paul would have called it that, but I believe that's what it is. Because I tell you what he did here, so you can recognize it. So if you read it, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness, of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Right. So the longest, and there's something I thought about. The Dalai Lama said. He said, when you're eating your food, and this is mental food, we're eating an orange. You should concentrate on eating that orange, just the orange, and you should concentrate on every segment of that orange. Yeah. So if we look at the segments of the statement, going from but against principalities, we know that as truth. We know there is a spiritual realm or a spiritual part to all of this. Against powers, yes, we certainly know that. Against the rulers of the darkness of this world, yes, we know that. Against spiritual wickedness in high places, we know all of those things as truth. Yeah? So there's a long bit, and it is actually because we actually pay attention more to the end of a statement than to the beginning. So there's a long bit at the end that we recognize as truth. And there's a very short bit at the start, a very short segment. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And we are swallowing this thing wholesale. That means we are swallowing the thought of not flesh and blood. We swallow that as truth with the rest. And there is the distortion. It is flesh and blood. Because in this world, the spirit has no form unless it is inside of us and we are doing its works. So yes, it absolutely is flesh and blood. It is inside the flesh and blood, inside the body. The bodies that do the works. So recognize the spirit, what this spiritual wickedness actually is. It is the intention to rule over and have dominion over you. And that you do its will against your conscience, against everything else, because it's bigger than you. So there's a spiritual wickedness, but it is inside flesh and blood. There are those that are the image of that intention. So you're going around, and this, not against flesh and blood. It takes a lot of people now to the place, because this is working. Yeah, this is a virus, and it's working inside of people's minds, and it's taking a lot of people to the place where they say, "Oh, this reality is nothing." I don't know. It kind of exists independent of anything else. There's a spiritual realm, but this flesh and blood is kind of, I don't know what it is. It just goes by its own. It is not attached to the other, and it is very much attached to the other. The two are one. It is the thought inside the body that quickens the body and makes it do things. And that's the spirit. So there you learn something. You're training your mind to recognize the serpent. You're training your mind not to wholesale swallow everything that is given to you. Food, mental food. In this day and age, people will swallow anything. There's no discernment whatsoever. You can tell them anything and then they run with it. But even if you are somebody who thinks a bit more careful before swallowing anything, there it shows you how it's being done. A very small segment at the start that is not truth, being wrapped around with something that you do recognize as truth, and then you swallow the whole thing, and the whole thing will establish itself as truth inside of you. the falsehood together with the truth. And this is why we should not burn books. And that is why we should not walk away from a pathogen. Like our biological body should not walk away from a pathogen. But our biological bodies should have knowledge of that pathogen, and then even if it changes slightly, our bodies will still fight it, it will still recognize it, it will still fight it. And there's the mental pathogen. Then train your mind to recognize it. So that next time, because otherwise you're running around, I'm burning this book, it's a lie, forget it, walk away. And the next idiot that comes and says, I'm the light in the way, and you will follow him because you have never ever learned to discern. And they most likely will again use this principle or applied psychology on you, and you have never learned to recognize it. You have never learned to recognize the serpent and its ways and how it works on you. And it is the whole thing of, well, we are gods, and that is all that matters. That is empty parrot talk. A God is created in its entirety, yes, from the start, but we need to illuminate the knowledge of what we are. And we are in a sea of pathogens in this world, in this reality, and in the spirit. We are in a sea of pathogens that will want to come to make us into one thing or another by giving us these half-truths, trying to change us into something that we are not. That we must find our own truth. And one part of that, at least, is recognizing the pathogen that will try to change you. And in that, Paul serves you. You must first of all recognize that he had an agenda, and that was to serve the kingdom of, I want to have dominion over you. That his intention is to make slaves for that kingdom, in order to enter it himself. Although, to be quite honest, I don't think he did. Because if you think of the kingdoms of that you have to change your energy onto the energy of a different reality. So every reality has got its own energies. So you need to change your energy into the energy of that other kingdom. I don't think Paul ever did that. I mean, he was a deceiver, and he was a serpent, but in the end he was human, and I think he remained human. So wicked as he was, I don't think he was wicked enough to actually make it. But that's his problem. So this is what I wanted to say, how these things serve us. We must confront them. We must see them in their entirety. We must train our mind to see them. I mean, this principle is being used all the time. Even in politics at the moment, you can see it, where they give you, when they bring in their laws, where they have this big chunk of truth, this is good, and then they put little attachments in it. And you have to vote for the whole thing in one go. Yeah, you have to accept the whole thing. This is a principle that's been worked all over the place, and we need to recognize it. And know our own truth in this. Know ourselves. And then we illuminate what we know us to be. And we grow up in the knowledge of what we are. We are gods, but we don't know what we're doing. Well, That is what we need to eliminate, the knowledge of ourselves. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.